Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Sound Guy Show, Wednesday edition here. Today we are going to kind of ADD our way around a bunch of different viewer questions that I have been asked to talk about. I'm going to try to kill like at least 3 or 4 birds with one stone here. In tonight's episode, we're going to talk about cable management. We're going to talk about last minute cancellations due to weather and getting paid in those scenarios and that sort of thing. We're also going to go back and talk a little bit about venues not being set up in a manner to where bands can load in easy and have power and the things that we need to do business in that scenario. I keep getting asked a lot of the same questions here. I have talked about all these things at some point in the past. If you go back through the archives, you will find me speaking at length about these. Today, we're going to kind of touch them, give them 5 or 10 minutes each of each subject here, and then we're going to roll on with our life. So stick around. You do not want to miss a second of today's show. Hey guys, if I could just have a moment of your time to talk to you about this channel. 49.8% of you guys watching this right now is not subscribed to this channel. Will you please hit that subscription button? It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel on the public side here. And then that gives us tools and resources and for my marketing team to be able to do what we need to do to get this content out to people who really enjoy this sort of thing. The other thing is, if you're super digging this and you'd like a deeper look into my world, then subscribe to the paid side of the YouTube channel. You can join for about the cost of a cup of coffee a month, and then I do vlogs over there. I post content that never goes public, and I let you into my world. I let you into the CLP audio world, and I let you see what our day-to-day life looks like. Love you guys. Thank you for the support. Okay, and we're back. So I guess let's start off at the top here. I had a guy say, "Hey, can you talk about the importance of cable management and people wrapping cables right?" Now, I have shared umpteen different times, however many times umpteen is. I don't know. Is that a West Virginia term? Is that universal hillbilly? I don't know how many times is actually umpteen. I would say it's in the teens there somewhere, with an ump. Maybe 15. Is 15 ump day of the teens? I don't know. I digress. Shared videos about how to wrap over-under. If you don't know what over-under is and you think I'm talking about changing the oil in your car or something, I am not. It is a cable wrapping technique. You can go to YouTube and literally find 9,632,314 videos, I counted, about wrapping over-under and be able to learn that technique. It is the correct and proper technique to wrap a cable, especially cables over, I'll say, 10, 15 feet, something like that. The longer the cable, the bigger the importance it is to do things that way. And once you do it for a while, you'll see the advantages of it. There is absolutely nothing worse than opening up a road case and seeing a rat's nest. And then now you got to spend 30 minutes, eat up 30 minutes of your setup time. Maybe you have that extra 30 minutes to burn. Maybe you don't. Let's hope you do, because now you're going to spend 30 minutes untangling a complete rat's nest inside your cable trunk. 2 things I will say that causes this the most is not even necessarily over-under. It's the fact that people don't Velcro their cables. Back in the day, before Velcro took over the world, we used to take a shoestring or some paracord and tie it on one end of the cable, and then we would tie that, after we got done wrapping it up over under, we would tie that in a nice little bow like you would your shoe, and that's how we stored our cables. Now we have the miracle of NASA engineered Velcro that you can put on each cable and kind of keep things managed that way. If you have every cable Velcroed, then when you start pulling them out of the case, nothing's tangled up. The other thing that will cause that rat's nest is if you need a cable that's at the bottom of that trunk, don't dig through all those cables, grab that cable and then pull it up through all the cables that were over top of it, because all you did was just turn those cables over and turn them right into a rat's nest. You take the cables out of the box and you stack them neatly next to the trunk as you work your way down to the cable that you need in the bottom of the case. Then after you get that cable out, you put those cables neatly back into the cable trunk. This is as 101 level, elementary, freshman level, My Little Pony level cable management information you could possibly get anywhere, okay? It's literally not even, like I always say it's not rocket science. This ain't even like, I don't even know what is the most elementary level of science, you know, basic science, like Bill Nye the Science Guy science, you know? Yeah. If you can do those three things, over, under, Velcro every cable, and don't be pulling the bottom cable out through all the top cables, and keep the stack of your cables correctly, that will solve you all those headache problems. Not to mention, here's the other side of it. Not to mention that, you know, when you don't wrap your cables correctly and you're pulling on cables and stuff like that, like I'll give you an example. Like say you're wrapping cables up at the end of the night, which seems to be, we always spend more time wrapping cables than we do anything. If your cable, the end of it, whether it's a speak-on or it's an XLR, if it catches on something and you don't stop wrapping, go find what it's catched on and free it on your own, but instead yank on the cable, that's a good way to get fired, instantly fired. Because if you didn't pull the connector off the end of the cable, which you probably did, you drastically put enormous amounts of violent stress on that connector, and probably something come loose inside of it, and you've now caused a problem there with that cable. And the next time you go to use that cable, you're cussing, well, it's a brand new cable, why ain't it working? You know, well, jackass, that's because you pulled on it like you was at a freaking Austin, Texas rodeo somewhere, you know, trying to wrangle in, you know, baby cat calves and cattle or something other around the barrels. I mean, come on, dude. Use some common sense. These connectors are not concreted on the end of these cables. In most cases, we're lucky to get a decent, you know, solder connection at an XLR, you know, or something like that. Go find what it's hung up on and free it. Free it, dude. Set it free so that you can gently and gradually wrap your cable. Again, it's not Bill Nye the Science Guy difficult, okay? It's just not. Moving right along. I have been asked more times than I could ever begin to count for me to once again talk about venues that are not prepared for bands. Now, we just went through a whole week of shorts 2 weeks ago talking about this subject. I guess you missed it. I don't know. I mean, my marketing guy tells me that I have 4 different audiences. I have the YouTube long form audience, the YouTube short form audience. You know, Facebook is mainly short form video audience. TikTok, short format video over there. I really pour 90% of the long form, 99% of the long form stuff here on YouTube, mainly on Wednesday nights or over on the member side, because I post a member video every week as well for the paid members, and they get inside information into my world. They get vlogs. They get all kinds of groovy stuff you don't get on the public side. But I digress. We have talked about this subject time and time and time again. So let me just repeat all the obvious things. Bar owners, because it's bar owners that are typically the issue here. I'll even wrangle in some of these new breweries and wineries that we're playing music in nowadays. In our area, in the Mid-Atlantic, like Philly to Richmond, you know, kind of thing, that includes DC and Baltimore. The Northern Virginia is like the the wine country of the East, so there's a bunch of wineries over there, a whole bunch of breweries in and around Maryland. Maryland people like to drink, so we'll wrangle them in there as well. Pay attention. And I know live music is usually an afterthought, okay? When you built your building or you remodeled the unit that you are doing business out of, you didn't stop long enough to think that, hey, we're going to do live music in this corner of the room. We should probably put 3 or 4 circuits of electricity over there. We should probably put a door near the stage so they can load right directly into the stage area and not have to push all their gear through 300 drunk people at the end of the night. Those are all pretty obvious, straight ahead things right there. You need to, if you have a dinner crowd, you need to not seat that section at least an hour before they plan to get there, which is typically 2 to 3 hours before they start. So you need to back that up. If the band starts at 8 o'clock, at about 4 o'clock, you should stop seating people in that section where the band is going to set up. The last thing any band wants to do is to show up and have to stage all their gear on the sidewalk outside the front door of the place, looking like a bunch of hobos, waiting for 13 people that are at tables in the stage area to finish eating and talking and conversing with their friends so that the band can come in and set up. No one wants to go and tell a table full of people they need to move. Look, when I'm out to dinner, I don't want that. It's not the people's fault. It's management's fault for seating these people in the exact place the band's going to be in like an hour. Like, come on, dude. I mean, let's get with this. I did a gig one time at this little Mexican restaurant, and there were these 2 Karens at a high top right next to where I was setting one of the front of house stacks at, who refused to move. They had moved all the tables out from around them. It was obvious what was going on. Wow, we got some weather moving in here. That's interesting. It was obvious what was going on. The band was loading in and setting up, and they just refused. All they had to do was move their whole high top table back 6 feet or something like that, and everything would have been just fine. Nope. They decided to sit there, so I set my stuff up literally right here next to them. I'm like, don't you see what's going on here, Karen? Finally, 15 minutes later, after they had proven that no one was going to tell them what to do, they decided that out of the graciousness of their heart, and they conveyed that to us, out of the kindness of their heart, they're going to now push their table back where the waitress had asked them to push it back 45 minutes earlier. And then that's where they sat. And then 5 minutes into the first song of the band, they left for the night. So they didn't even stay for the band after they put the band and my production team and everybody through a bunch of freaking drama. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen in my life. But hey, that's what playing clubs is like. That's the stuff that we go through. Again, it's Bill Nye the Science Guy level science here. It's not rocket science. So if you're a bar owner and you have the fortunate luck of finding my content, these are things you should probably think about, and things that you should really seriously put into place to make your band comfortable. It's really your responsibility as a bar owner to create a warm and inviting environment for the band to come in and feel comfortable and feel like they have all the resources they need to be creative and put on the best show they can. So you have a responsibility as a bar owner to help create that environment. If you have an in-house sound guy, make sure the guy's got a good attitude, Look, all us sound guys are grumpy at times. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Usually because people are trying to screw us all the time. But, hire a guy, like when I was working house sound, when you came in, you always seen a smile on my face the first time you looked at me. Like, hey man, great to see you. Been looking forward to the show all day. We're going to really crush it tonight, man. It's going to be a good night, and it tried to create that kind of welcoming, comfortable environment for them to come in and do what they do best. So that's kind of the deal there. Next on the list. So I had a very good friend of mine who's actually technically one of my competitors, but we're buddies, we get along really well. He's one of these guys that I respect and who respects me, and this is unspoken, framework between us. we both bid on a lot of the same jobs sometimes. We both are coming to the table many, many times with competing bids, and that sort of thing. And not once have we ever had a bad word between us because we respect each other's place. He's in a little bit different place than I am. He has a day job, and this is kind of a weekend second job for him. And then I am doing this full time. So we're coming from two different places, Now it's raining cats and dogs. Can you guys hear that? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we got ourselves a nice little rainstorm moving in here. So he asked me, he said, JR, he goes, I kind of avoid doing outdoor shows in the summer because I'm afraid of getting screwed with rain, ironically enough, as it's raining here. How do you deal with that, And really the short answer to that is super simple. You always got to have a contract. So he's like, well, man, he goes, I'm not really pursuing the outdoor festival scene like you are, so I'm kind of in a different situation, but I'm really talking more on club level stuff. Like he does a lot of dock bars who are in open air environments, or beach clubs that are in open air environments, and they are weather contingent. And he's hesitant to take gigs from these people because if it rains, well, they can cancel the show the day of, and now he's out, a day's pay. I get that, dude. I get that. And then he even said, well, what I find is a lot of times the band has a contract through their agent with the club, so the band gets reimbursed at least, 40 or 50% of what they were hired to play because it was a last minute cancellation, but they never factor in the production into that. So, how do I navigate my way through that without pissing everybody off and without losing business? And I said, dude, there comes a point in this, and he hasn't quite gotten there yet, but I think he's going to, because I think it's situations like this that's going to bring this to the forefront, in his career trajectory, is you have to pick and choose, number one, who you're going to work with. And if you work with bands who make paying you a priority, then you're always going to be part of that equation. Like, if you want to give me 50% of what I was supposed to get paid to do this, hey, that's fine. But once I arrive at the venue and I'm in the parking lot, you owe me the entire amount. I'm here. And I always tell people that stuff up front because these are gigs that are under that $1,200 mark or whatever that we usually don't do contracts with. Most of the B-market club scene operates without contracts unless they may have a contract. If they're an agency club, they may have a contract with the agency who is protecting the band. Again, that's another advantage that you get when you work with a booking agent, is the booking agent has a contract with the club, and if they cancel you at the last minute, well then the booking agent on your behalf can go and lobby to get at least half of your money, even though you never left the house. If you show up on the job site, at the club, then the club's on the hook for the full amount. Well, now you have an agent to advocate those things for you. If you don't, and you're in the production situation, and you're working with people who really don't care about you getting paid, and that sort of thing, then you have to ask yourself whether or not those are people that you're going to do business with moving forward. Because it's really as simple as that. I cut a band off a few years ago because they had always, paid me at the end of the gig, and we get to the end of the gig, and usually if it's someone I trust, I will work under those pretenses because we have a history and we have a relationship we've built, and you trust me and I trust you, and we're all good. We don't need contracts. We know we're all going to do the right thing here. But for whatever reason, these guys got a little bit drunk that night, and at the end of the night, when I'm asking about getting paid, they're like, oh, well, we'll just mail you a check on Monday. And I'm like, well, man, that's not how we have done business in the past. And he was kind of like, yeah, but this is how we pay everybody in the band. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm not a member of your band. I'm a hired gun. So these guys may have already agreed to that because you had a set down meeting and you decided this is how you're going to do business. And I respect that, man. If that's what works for your band, great. I'm not part of your band. I am a hired gun. So that means I get paid the night of every single time. It's the way you've always done business with me in the past. Why are things so different? You know? And he's like, well, I didn't bring my checkbook and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, you've paid me electronically before. Just Venmo me the money. You know, it's not a big deal. And he kind of made a big deal of it. He was drunk. And I made a decision that I was not going to argue with a drunk guy. So at that point, we were already loaded out and ready to, the truck was running. We were ready to pull out of the parking lot. You know, I hopped in the truck and we went home, you know. And then the next day, he texted me before I got a chance to text him because I was going to try to catch him when he was sober and hopefully, you know, get somewhere with this. He said that he was going to electronically, you know, pay me the money that he owed me now that it's the next day. You know, it was just Sunday or Monday or whatever. And I was kind of like, okay, that's great. You know, I really appreciate that. But I'm no longer available for you. You know, we had 2 or 3 other dates on the books. They were months out. It wasn't like it was a week away or anything. I said, you can find someone else, you know, for those events. I'm not interested in doing business with someone who doesn't make paying me a priority. And then he was trying to backpedal. Then it was like, well, hey, look, man, you know, this is just how we do business in our band. And, you know, I didn't realize that you absolutely would insist on getting paid the night of. And, you know, I did have a little too much to drink last night. And I'm sorry if I came off a certain way and made you feel any kind of way. And I'm like, well, yeah, you did, because I don't drink. So I'm always sober at the end of the night. I said, yeah, you did. And I can forgive that. You're forgiven. You know, I mean, hey, man, it is what it is. We work in bars. Sometimes people just have a few too many. It's not personal, man. This is not personal in any way, shape, or form. I still consider you a friend. But as far as us doing business together moving forward, I'm not interested. Find someone else. Because I'm not going to work for someone who doesn't make paying me a priority. Most of my clients will Venmo me or Zelle me the money before I even leave the house. It's just the way it works. Or at the very least, as soon as they show up, because I'm always there before them, as soon as they show up, they hand me a check or they say, hey, man, you know, I'm sending you a Venmo right now. I got one band that always does it after the first set. I don't know why. I don't know why it's like that. I trust them. We've been friends for years. And I know they would be the last people in the world to ever screw me. But in their world, they don't ever think about it until after the first set. So during that first break, the singer always comes to me and says, hey, man, I'm Venmoing you some money right now. And it's like, yeah, man, it's all good. You know, it's cool. Now, if you come to me and you say, JR, we don't really have a bunch of money in the bank. We're a new band. The bar owner just gave us a check, you know, or we are anticipating that the bar owner is going to give us a check for this. We're not going to have the money to pay you the night of. Is it okay if we pay you, you know, Monday or Tuesday whenever the check goes through in the bank? I'm probably going to be perfectly cool with that. Because now we had a conversation about it. You're not telling me how I'm going to do business. You're asking me to be a team member and to get on board with you for this one specific event. It might be a big dollar corporate event. Look, my people aren't going to starve to death waiting 2 or 3 days to get paid. It's not about the money as much as it is the principle. You know, we work too damn hard in this business and get beat up too hard on these budgets and everything else for people to treat us like an afterthought. So I said all that to say, getting back to the original question of how do I deal with this on a club level where there's not any contracts in place. He says, well, then what do I do when, you know, the band's getting paid and I'm not? And I'm like, then you communicate to the band that because I'm not getting paid for this, and I know you're getting paid for part of this, we can't do business anymore. The problem is if I had to guess, if I had to look into a crystal ball and guess where my buddy's at and his thinking, is he's afraid that he's going to piss a bunch of people off and no one's going to call him anymore. You can't run a business out of fear. You can't. And I told him that. I said, listen, man, there's going to be people who are not going to agree with this. Like all my festival contracts say, you know, there's a deposit to be paid with a return signed contract that solidifies the dates in our services. You just bought those dates and those services from us. But you pay the remaining amount 5 days before the event. I learned this from my pro touring buddies and from my national band buddies because it's how they do their contracts. Every national band that you go to see, 99% of the time, they were paid 5 days ago before they even got to the gig. So when they show up at the gig, there's no stress about getting paid. The payment's done. You know, there's no stress about, you know, fulfilling your obligation. You go and fulfill your obligation. It is what it is. And he said, well, man, how do you keep from pissing people off? I said, it pisses people off regularly. You know who it pisses off? It pisses off all the people you don't want to work for anyways. It pisses off all the people who are control freaks and think they are the ones who should dictate whether or not you get paid. Not your contract, not your handshake, not your word. And those aren't people that I want to do business with. Yes, there comes a point where you got to walk away from the table and you're going to lose business over it. But the business that you lose isn't going to be good quality business. You know, maybe 1 out of every 10 of those clients you lose is somebody you probably, or you kind of wish you didn't lose. But at the same day, you really want to work from somebody and go do everything that we can do? Like in my situation, you know, I have at least one guy with me all the time that I have to pay. That guy is depending on this money. Well, if you don't pay me, I still have to pay him. You know, when you get on the festival level, now I have 3 or 4 guys that are expecting to get paid, plus a generator rental most of the time, sometimes a box truck rental. There's other expenses, fuel costs, hotels have already been booked and paid for. You know, all that stuff is in place. That's why you have to pay 5 days in advance. That way we can make sure we have all of our overhead covered and we have money in the bank. If God forbid something, I had this, man, 2 years in a row, I had generators take a dump on me on the job and had to go rent a second generator. And it took the rental company like 2-3 weeks to get my money back to me. So I got to set on that money that I lost on the first rental to get the second rental. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's more at play here than just you and some equipment, you know? At least in my world there is. Even if it is just you and your equipment, like it is in my buddy's, you know, situation, because he's not a big, you know, touring company or not a big production company. It's just him and a club level sound system. I'm like, man, you got to pick and choose who you're going to do business with. You know, the people that you can depend on, the people who make paying you a priority, lean toward them, treat them super nice. You give them all the bang for the buck that you can give them and make sure that they're happy every time they walk away from the gig because they're taking care of you. The clients that are always shady, don't answer messages in a timely manner, you know, make you feel like you're an afterthought, you know, don't make you a priority in the event. Those are the guys that are always going to want to renegotiate the price at the end of the gig. Well, we didn't have very good ticket sales. Like a buddy that I do stage rentals with, you know, we just had to cut somebody off recently for that. The guy would cancel the gig on Monday of that week's gig because ticket sales were not good. We can't run businesses that way, dude. We can't run, and we had the guy under contract. What are you going to do? You're going to take him to court, you know, spend $3,000 to get $1,500 out of him? And I was even nice, my buddy and I both, he's doing production, I'm doing staging. We were nice enough to give him a rain date, you know, to give him a rescheduled date and, you know, try to treat him right to earn his business. And it just continued to go on and on and on, this whole thing of canceling gigs at the last minute. And we finally just had to cut the guy off. You really want to do business with it? Are you so desperate to get out there and work that you're willing to do business with somebody like that who may or may not even pay you? Every now and then, yeah, I'm just trying to pick and choose my words here carefully. Every now and then, I will do a gig where I will accept cash payment at load in. And that's after I've had a deposit and a signed contract. And we will note it on the contract. They're going to pay cash money or, you know, a Zelle transfer, which is instant. You can see it in 5 minutes. You know, at the load in. We're not going to unload one piece of equipment. We're not going to set up one, you know, stage truss. You know, we're not doing anything until we get paid. And I've had some of those situations where we showed up and they didn't have the money. Then I'm in a situation where I got to keep their deposit. I never want to keep somebody's deposit, okay? Let me just tell you this. I'm not in the business, nor do I make huge profits by screwing people out of their deposit, okay? That deposit is just I'm getting you to invest a little skin in the game. That's what that deposit's for. That's usually a fraction of an amount of what the big number is. Sometimes it's 50% down. It depends on who you are and how much you creep me out as to how big the deposit's gonna be. If it's a regular client, it's usually a pretty low, easy to digest number. But then if you have to cancel, now I have to keep your deposit. Now I feel bad for you, but I got to take that money from the deposit and pay my crew because they are still expecting to get paid. You know, the event shuts down. It's not their fault. It's not my fault. But that's why I got the deposit there, to try and at least cover them, or at least give them 50% of what I had promised them. And then they can maybe go find a last minute freelance gig somewhere or something. But I don't think you can keep crew in place if you continually have gigs that cancel and you screw your crew and say, well, guys, you know, it canceled, so, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, if it happens the day of or the week of, like my contract says, within 30 days of the event, you're on the hook for 100% if you cancel inside that 30 day. I have been a nice guy, especially to some benefit-based stuff that I support and I'm behind, who have canceled 2 weeks out. I could have held their feet to the fire for the full amount, but I think they're good people, and I think they just don't know what they don't know about the business. I kept their deposit. I was able to cover my crew and at least break even. I lost the date. Yes, I'm still in the lose category, but if I feel like these are good, honest people and they just couldn't quite get their stuff together and they were afraid of losing a bunch of money because there was a rain forecast coming and that sort of thing, I will sometimes, and it don't happen very often, man, and I'm just going to tell you straight up, I'm talking like 1 to 2% of the time, you know, I may not make them pay the final amount and just keep their deposit. I don't want to keep your deposit. I can't run a business that way. Like I can't run a business going around taking everybody's deposits, you know, planning a crew and a generator rental and you know, pay for hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff and everything. And then the gig not happen, 100% of that deposit is going to go to cover those overhead costs. So I'm not making any money, dude. I'm in the lose category. So I did that once last year. And I genuinely think that they're going to come back and they're going to try and do something with me again in the future. And this has been a learning experience for them. And I felt like I just had a gut feeling, man, you know, that these guys they're going to be business moving forward. And I'm trying to treat them right. You know, they were very apologetic. They were super nice people. I was in a situation where I had plenty of money coming in. You know, the deposit would cover the expenses. It was what it was. I don't recommend doing it. I don't recommend making a habit of it. I'm not making a habit of it. But in that one particular situation, I felt that this was a time to show grace and mercy. That's something you just got to figure out on your own, man. You got to get to know your clients and know who you can trust and who you can't trust. And sometimes you can't trust anybody. Sometimes those people that are the nicest to you are the ones that are trying to stick it to you the most. I don't know. I just felt when I was on the phone with the guy, I was on vacation in Ocean City at the time. You know, he calls me and the gig was coming up, you know, the following weekend. And I just kind of felt something in my spirit, man. Like, you know, I need to help these guys out, you know. So I said, all right, I'll just keep your deposit. That's where it is. And they were a 50% down, you know, situation because I hadn't done business with them before. So it wasn't like it was $1,000. It was a significant amount of money. But I could have made them pay the other half of it legally, you know. This is all part of doing business. This is what I told my buddy when we were having this conversation. It's a balancing act between boundaries and trying to be a person of integrity. Because my buddy is a person of integrity. He really is, you know. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The more you lose, I'll tell you this, the more you lose, the more cautious you are moving forward. And that's the thing that a lot of these promoters don't understand. You know, they just want to go with whoever will play the game by their rules. Because here's the other part of this, and I'll close with this. These promoters, these bands, and these club owners, the people who hire production in the middle market, are constantly trying to wrangle you into the risk factor. And by that, what I mean is they want you to assume risk for the event. So if they don't sell a bunch of tickets, then you're going to adjust your price because you're a team player. No, that's not how we do business. We don't run our business that way. The promoter is the guy who takes the risk because he's the guy who is going to get all the reward if it's in a success, and he's the guy that's going to take a hit if it's not a success. If he's a good promoter, he has factored that into the equation, meaning he has money in the bank to cover his overhead regardless of what the ticket sales are. See, that's the problem, and a lot of these concert promoters get themselves, into a bind is because they are depending solely on the ticket sales to finance the festival. Well, if you don't already have the money for the bands, the production, the Blue John guys, the tent rental guys, the caterers, the list goes on and on and on, security, all the people that you need for this event, if you don't already have that money sitting in the bank to pay them people and you're only depending on ticket sales, brother, that is a crazy, crazy risk. And it's not a risk that I am willing to be part of in any form or fashion. When you hire us, you're hiring us for our services. The same way you hire the Blue John guys, the same way you hire your security team, the same way you hire your tent rental guys and all that kind of stuff. Do you go to your tent rental guys if it's a flop and say, hey man, can you now do this for half the price that we agreed on because ticket sales ain't that good? That guy's going to tell you, no man, you're not going to get any tents. I can bring you half as many tents out. Same way with the Blue John guy. You really going to mess with the Blue John guy? I mean, we kind of need Blue Johns, dude. The Porta Johns are as important as the band in some cases, you know what I mean? You really going to tell that guy, wrangle him into the risk? Well, if we do good, then, I'll pay you your full amount. But if we don't do good, then, I'm going to have to pay you like a third of what we agreed on. No, that is your responsibility as the promoter, not mine. I don't have any skin in this game. And here's the kicker, and I've said this a million times. Here's the kicker of that whole situation. Let's say you would typically do an outdoor festival, stage, sound, lighting, everything for 10 grand. Let's just throw that number out there because it's easy to work with. If this guy decides that, hey man, I'm only going to pay you, I only have a budget for 5 grand. Let's just say it that way. Like, can you do it for 5 grand? I'm like, dude, that's half of what I usually charge. So, I mean, no. I mean, that I barely can cover overhead at 5 grand on an event that size between staffing and the rental stuff, and because they always need a generator for that stuff because they're going to want to do it out in the field somewhere. No, I don't have the ability to do this. Okay, man, well, how about, like they turn into a used car salesman. How about, $6,500? How about 7 grand? I can go 7 grand. 7 grand is my last number. I can do this. At this point in the negotiation, I'm just here like, well, you just said a minute ago all you had was 5 grand. Now you all of a sudden magically you wave a magic wand over your checkbook. Now you have 7 grand. Something ain't adding up here. I'm immediately red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. I'm going nuts now already because I am a master negotiator. And I'm like, yeah, this is not going in the direction I wanted to go in. But let's say for the sake of the conversation, you're a nice guy. You say, okay, I'll do it for 7 grand. So then you go and do the event. The event, weather's great. The event blows up. They got 10,000 people there. This guy just made, $40,000, $50,000 in profit on top of all the vending, rental stuff he had out. And, the dude is just murdering it that day. At the end of the event, not once in 35 years of being in this business have I had a concert promoter like that in that scenario come to me and say, JR, I know you usually charge 10 grand for this. I would like to go ahead and give you your full price because, we had a great day here and I'd really like to talk to you about doing this again next year. That has never happened. Never. Not once in 35 years. No, they'll pay you the 7 grand and laugh all the way to the bank. Meanwhile, you're working for peanuts at that point. If you're lucky, you're going to walk away with $1,000, $1,500 in profit, which considering you just brought a couple $100,000 worth of gear to the event would not have happened without the equipment that you put in there because you're providing stage sound and lights, generator, all that stuff. Like you are kind of a key part of this, and you're walking away with peanuts. Now, how do you feel? Now on Monday, when you're doing your checkbook and you're paying the crew and you're doing all the things that you need to do to make things work, And you're sitting there like, man, when it was all done and over with, I only made like $1,500 on this thing. Man, that was a lot of work, especially if it's like a multi-day event or something. Which 10 grand for a multi-day event is a bargain. Let me just tell you that right now, especially if you're providing staging. That's the kind of thing that makes a guy take a hard look in the mirror and say, why the hell am I even doing this? Why the hell am I even? This guy walked away with 40 or 60 grand worth of profit and couldn't come over and give me the other 3 grand that I was asking for originally, just as a gesture. So you cannot get into these situations where you are assuming part of the risk of the event. The risk of the event is on the bar owner, it's on the concert promoter, it's on the band 100% of the time if they are the ones putting the event together. Now, if I decide to put my own event together, I was just talking to my girlfriend earlier today. We were driving through an area that had this park that they used to do rock shows at all the time. And I said, we ought to just rent that field like they did back in the 80s, early 90s, and go down there, set the stage up, put a generator up, and do bands all day. And you don't even charge admission, just charge people $20 to park. Bring as many people in your vehicle as you want, $20, there you go. Motorcycles, $10. You know what I'm saying? Like, do something like that. Now, in that scenario, I'm assuming all the risk because I am the promoter. No risk, no reward. I'm the guy who's all in on this event. I'm the guy who is risking everything on this event. I got to hire security. I got to hire, people to help organize the food vendors and all that kind of stuff and everything. I got to hire all the bands, and I need to have that money set aside so that if it pours down rain that day and no one shows up, well then, I can still pay everybody because that's what a real concert promoter does. But if it takes off and it's gangbusters, then we stand to make a pretty good profit. And any long-term concert promoter, especially a guy that does outdoor stuff, will tell you is that you win some and you lose some. You hope to win a few to get some money in the bank to give you a little bit of a safety net so that when you finally get a rain out day or you get a day where some kind of inclement weather thing goes on, that keeps you from having the show, then you still got money to be able to pay, the artists, and you can kind of keep trudging forward, with what you do. It's a hard business. That is a hard business to be in. I know guys that have been on that side of the business who've done outdoor shows for decades, and I have heard the stress. I have heard the horror stories. I know what it is. It's not something that I'm real overly anxious to do, although the thought crosses my mind regularly. But I think, if I'm the promoter, then I'm, of course, in that scenario, because I own a production company, I will be providing production, and I'll just be on the hook for my crew and the generator rental, and, I would probably do it close to home, so there wouldn't be a lot of, travel expenses or hotels or whatever. And then I would try to make money off of renting, the food vending spots, use as many sources of income that I can use to do this. And, hire some security. It's probably going to cost, $5-6 grand or whatever to do it right, and go and do it. But if I am just hired production in a scenario like that, whoever's throwing that event is the one that's assuming the risk, not me. And we got to get out of that mindset because here's the scenario I see play over and over and over. Someone will call me, hey man, we're so-and-so and we're with, a lot of times they're with a benefit that is really cool, like Relay for Life or any kind of cancer thing. I have a boatload of family that's died of cancer. My mom died of cancer. All my aunts and uncles on that side of the family pretty much have died of cancer. It's just something that has run rampant, and it's something that's very close to my heart. I hate having to have these conversations with those kind of people. But they come to me and they say, hey man, look, this is our first year. We don't know what we're doing. It's a benefit to raise money. What do you think? Because they know that I'm someone who's put on a lot of events in my day. I really have. I have done a ton of that promoter position kind of stuff where I was the guy risking it all. And believe me, I've lost my ass. I really have. I've also made some good money at different times. But they always want my input because they're trying to solicit my services. And I'm like, look, you got to spend money to make money, first of all, you know? So if you don't have at least 10 or 15, 20 grand sitting in the bank to do the event correctly, I wouldn't suggest doing it. Go to your local club or go to a Moose Lodge or something like that and hire the most popular band in your area for $2,500, and do a bonanza, and have raffles going off all the time and all that kind of stuff and everything, and raise money that way. It's a lot less risk. You're indoors, so you're not weather contingent, but some people will fall for that poverty story and say, well, it's our first event, but we want to do this like 3 or 4 times a year, every year. They always come to the table with that story. We want you to be our guy. We want you to be our guy moving forward. You come highly recommended. We've seen your work. We follow you on Facebook. We love the Grumpy Sound Guy. All the things. We want you to be our guy. We're looking to do 4 or 5 of these a summer every year moving forward. But this is our first event, and we really need help on this event, to get this going. If I had a nickel for every time someone's come to me under those pretenses and they never did another event after the first event because they didn't know how to do the first event, so the first event was a flop, or they barely made enough money to even break even and never made any money for the benefit, or it completely flopped and they lost their rear end, and it stings so bad when you lose that way that they never come back to do another event. Well, because they haven't come back to do another event, if I did the event for 3 or 4 grand or some kind of ridiculously low price, I was assuming part of the risk in investing in all these events they were talking about in the future. Well, look, man, I don't know about you, but my crystal ball is broken, and my crystal ball is not telling me anything about the future, so I have to work with people who have their stuff together, who aren't afraid to put their money where their mouth is, and are going to follow through today, and let's put dates on the calendar. Let's get contract and deposits in place for another 4 events this year. And then I will believe that what you're saying is going to happen. I will believe that you have deep enough pockets that you can weather a bad first show. Maybe weather a bad second show before you get to a place where you're actually turning the numbers you want to turn. There it is. That's how it works. So it always is going to come back to your decision on whether or not you want to work with the person that's on the other side of the phone. And if there are people that are, messing around with numbers, I had a buddy of mine, I'll tell you this and then we'll stop. I know this is going long. I had a buddy of mine tell me just the other day that he got a gig that I had turned down because of these sort of reasons. It was a local gig that the guy is playing used car salesman with the numbers. I seen it from a mile away. I did a couple shows for him a few years back, and all he did was bellyache and complain about what he had to pay me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just not that guy. Okay, there's plenty of ankle biters out there that can go do your work for you for whatever price you want to pay. So then my buddy calls me, who I genuinely love and care about, and he tells me, hey, man, I got such and such gig. And I said, oh, you did, huh? I said, I was in negotiations on that gig and turned it down with the headliner, who's a very good, close personal friend of mine. But I'm here to tell you now, they are trying to screw somebody financially. And he's like, wow, man. He goes, yeah, I agreed to do it, but I didn't even get a number from him. And I was like, what? You booked the gig and you didn't even agree on a number? You just said, okay, yeah, man, I'll do it. So you have no idea what you're making. No, man, I think I need to call him back. I'm like, yeah, because he's looking to screw somebody for like $200 or $300. And he's like, well, dude, I ain't going to do it for that. There's no way. And I'm like, look, man, here's what I charged. I was completely transparent with him. Here's what I charged the last 2 years there. And he bellyached and complained like I was, running him out of business. And the guy had 200-300 people there every time at his event. I mean, he had strong ticket sales and stuff for what he was doing. And I was charging the right number. He's just freaking greedy and don't want to pay it. He was like, man, he goes, I didn't even think about any of that stuff, man. And blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you better call the dude back, man, and find out what it's going to pay. And you better agree to those numbers before you go in there. And if it was me, I'd make the guy sign a contract. Because he's the guy that if it rains or if no one shows up, is going to come to you at the end of the night and be like, dude, this is all I can pay you. Here's $200. And I'm like, but that's not what we agreed to. So now you're either going to get in a fist fight with the guy, or you're going to go to a lawyer and pay $1,500 to get your other $300 or $400 that he shorted you. You ain't going to do any of that. You're going to suck it up and take it on the nose. And that's what I told my buddy. I'm like, it's your choice, dude. I ain't telling you how to do business. If you want to go down there and get screwed, go down there and get screwed. But I'm telling you, the guy's looking for somebody to screw. So you better be super careful about what you're doing. This guy's legitimately, for all intents and purposes, my competitor now on that event. And I'm telling him how to make money. So for all you guys who are constantly down my throat about how I'm a hater and how I don't enjoy what I do, that I always have a negative, attitude and that sort of stuff, go talk to some of the people that I work with regularly, and you'll tell you I'm a man of integrity, and I always try to pay it forward, and I always try to help people, even if they're my competitors. The two people we've talked about in this conversation have been people who will regularly bid against me on club level stuff. And I'm still their friend. There's enough work for everybody. I don't play those drama games. I don't hate, I appreciate. Just because you look into this small window of my world through this content doesn't mean you know who I am. And doesn't mean you know how we do business. We're well respected and well liked in our area. And we're in high demand. We regularly do 180 to 200 shows a year. And for a small company like that, like us, that's a lot. We have no desires to be a pro touring company. We have no desires to have a crew of 20 people working for us. We do everything we can do with about 8 to 12 1099 contract guys and myself. I am basically a one-man show at CLP Audio with a bunch of contractors working for me. It is what it is. But here I am helping a guy who's bidding an event that I walked away from. I'm not mad at him. Somebody's got to do the event. I recently lost a venue down in the city, down in Baltimore, that I was doing a lot of work at because the guy that was doing the work there had a falling out with the owner. And, she ended up hiring me for 1.5 years or 2 years to go in there and do work, was super happy with everything I did. Well, then the other guy, came back and they kissed and made up. He lives 10 minutes away from the venue. Now he has all the work. I see his posts every week online of all the work that used to be mine and is now his. Am I mad about that? Not even a little bit. It's the way the business goes. If you can't handle those ups and downs, you don't need to be in this business. We are mature adults here. Let's all face the facts that our clients are almost always going to go with the cheapest guy in town or the one just above him. I'm neither of those things. I'm in the top 5% of sound engineers. CLP Audio and Staging is in the top 5% of middle market companies in a 200-mile radius. We have work. We're not starving to death. Yeah, sometimes it gets thin. Sometimes it gets crazy busy. That's just the ups and downs of running your own business. Even if you owned a pizza shop, it would be that way. Sometimes it gets slow. Sometimes it gets fast. Sometimes people decide to eat at the other pizza shop in town and not yours, even though they've been eating at your pizza shop for 10 years. A new place opens up down the street and sells the same pizza for 99 cents cheaper, and guess where they're going? If you don't understand those things when you go into this business and you go into business for yourself, and you let yourself get all emotionally wrapped up in that and make an enemy out of somebody who was once your friend just because he's doing his due diligence, that bar owner is doing their due diligence, I'm not mad about that. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. I know they're looking at my posts on Facebook. A lot of people are wishing they had the accounts that we had, and it goes both ways, dude. You can't bat 1,000 all the time, and you're not going to get the great gig every time. I miss a lot of really fun gigs to these weekend warrior guys that are working for the government or they got big paying day jobs and they do this as a hobby on the weekend, and they'll go take all the really cool fun gigs and lowball the price because they want the gig because it's fun to do and it's easy. And I don't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting those events. I've got to be able to accept that and still look the guy in the face and love him, And and not get emotionally wrapped up in it. Oh, that SOB and this, that, and the other, and he cut my throat and he did this. Dude, if that's where you are, get out of the business, okay? Because you're never going to survive this business that way. Clients come and clients go, and clients do whatever the hell clients want to do. It ain't got to make no sense to you or anybody else. It only has to make sense to that client. And if that client didn't like the color of your truck you pulled your stage to the event on and wants to hire somebody else with a different colored truck, like whatever. I had somebody complain one time about, I had a U-Haul rental truck at a gig that was parked next to the stage. And they said, we're not advertising for U-Haul. We don't like the fact that you have, a big U-Haul truck next to the stage. And I mean, it was like 20 feet away from the stage. It wasn't like, in the same scope of this. I mean, it was just stupid. Dude, crap happens, man. All the time. If you ain't ready to weather those storms and you ain't, emotionally mature enough to understand that, hey, that bar owner was in her best interest to hire this guy back because he lives 10 minutes from the venue and he's cheaper than me. And he does pretty good work. That's the thing about all these guys I've talked about in this episode. All those guys do pretty good work. Are they me? No. But they're them. And being them is enough to make the client happy. Why am I all torqued up about it? It's silly to me, these guys that make enemies out of everybody because they lose an event to somebody. Dude, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, man. Honestly, it just is. It's not personal, man. It's business. And I always say that the other way when I end up getting something they had at one time. Clients will change, vendors just for the sake of changing vendors because they think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. I may charge the exact same cost. I may charge more than the guy they had before. To them, they're upgrading, or, something happened with, I talked to somebody the other day that, talked about not bringing a band back because somebody got in an argument with somebody down the street that was part of the event. That person down the street really has no significance of the event or the venue. But because they're part of their staff, it got back to the concert promoter, and guess what? Now they won't hire that band for any price. There's so much of this stuff that's out of our control, man. Why are you so emotionally invested in it that you feel like you got to make an enemy out of everybody that's doing the same thing you're doing? Look, guys, let's face it. There's like a 25% difference between guys on my level and ankle biter guys. You know how many of these clients don't care what it sounds like out front as long as the band's mic'd up and it's loud and the band's playing the right set list and people are drunk enough to not care about production? Are you out of your mind? You really think that you're that good? You're that one guy who has the golden skills of mixing that you are worth 100 times more than everybody else in the area. I hate to bust your bubble, dude, but there's probably 4 or 5 other guys in the area that can mix every bit as good as you. I know there's 4 or 5 other guys in my area that can mix every bit as good as me. I don't lay in bed at night freaking fretting over that and, worried about it. And are they going to go steal my clients? Dude, that ain't no way to live. I don't live my life in fear. I just refuse to do it. But I live my life in terms of understanding the reality of the world we live in. There's a part of the serenity prayer that I learned in my recovery process. Taking this world as Jesus did, not as I would have it. Jesus took this world as it was. Live and let live. Understanding that there are so many things that are out of your control. Why are you so emotionally invested in that? And I feel the same way about competition. Now, sometimes it stings, man. I'm not going to say it doesn't. Sometimes I lose accounts that I really, really sit and ponder and say, what could I have done different? I worshiped the ground they walked on. I gave them the best deal I could. I really honestly tried to do the best I could. Crap happens. You can't make any sense out of why clients do what they do. The only thing you can control is your reaction to it. And I choose to appreciate and not hate. I choose to show grace and mercy in those situations where, there's nothing I could have done differently to keep that client. That client had made up its mind that they're going to change regardless of how good or bad that I was. And there's some instances where I did make mistakes that I can 100% put my finger on, and that's why I lost that client. All I can do at that point is use that as a learning experience and try not to make that mistake again moving forward. It's just where I am. And it's where you need to be too. I hope you made sense of some of this ADD content because we were kind of all over the place today. I love you guys. I honestly appreciate every one of you. Please hit the subscribe button. I know we're like almost an hour into this, you know, or whatever, or over an hour with the intros. Please hit the subscribe button. You know, we're trying to drive the YouTube numbers up into a bracket where the AI and the algorithms will start opening up the content to a broader audience. And we need your help on that. We really do, man. You know, can you please hit the subscribe button, share this video on social media, share this video with the people in your band, you know, your club owner buddy, you know, all that kind of stuff. Anybody who can benefit from this content. We are genuinely trying to get in a place where we can do more good with this kind of positive message about the music industry. Look, it's a tough business. It ain't a business for sissies, that's for sure. So you're either gonna make it or you're gonna get eaten alive, you know, one way or the other. So if you're gonna, you know, have the trials and tribulations that it is to run a business in the United States and deal with all the tax stuff and the insurance and, you know, all that stuff, that's something else I told a buddy of mine the other day. I'm like, you know, the thing is half the people that are bidding against me don't even have a business license. They have no liability insurance. You know, God forbid if something goes bad, it's gonna be rough on the band or whoever it was that hired them because they don't have any insurance. You know, they don't even have a business license. You know, they're running under a sole proprietorship and just maybe even claiming the money on their taxes. A lot of this business operates cash level. They're hiding the money. The IRS don't even know about it. You got to be able to navigate all that stuff in a healthy way. So if you can't, then stay on the sidelines and leave the hard work to us professionals. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.